In this video, we're going to use what we learned in the previous video about the layout menu and get the user interface to represent your physical hardware. I'm going to open up this keyboards template, and then I'm going to go to layout. Then I'm going to select everything here and delete it. Now I'm ready to start populating the layout window with items. The first thing I want to do is start my keyboard layout. Now I can work one by one and populate items this way, and individually drag pieces in here and resize them. But we run into problems pretty quickly with resizing, so let me show you how I prefer to do it. The first thing I'm going to do is drag this keyboard in here, and then I'm going to add the other contents as well. I'm going to add the pitch bend, I'm going to add the mod wheel, and then I'm going to add the sustain pedal. I want this whole system to act as one unit, so I'm going to click and select everything, and then I'm going to group the items together by selecting this button here. Now I can resize. If we've set up our MIDI controller correctly, MainStage will automatically recognize your keyboard when you plug it in, but you can also go over to the screen control inspector here and select Assign, and then start playing keys. I'm not going to mess around with velocity, but if I wanted to, I could adjust the sensitivity of my playing. Let's talk about some of the items of the screen control inspector now that I have the keyboard. It's likely that MainStage will automatically detect your keyboard, but you can also click the Assign button and play a few keys if you want. Now moving on down, I have the number of keys which are on my keyboard, and I can manually tell it what the lowest key is, but I can also hit this Learn button and play the key, and that will set my correct lowest key. Keyboard layers is really important. I usually don't use too many layers, so I'm going to enable 5. This is going to show us a flat bar for every keyboard layer we have active in a patch. I really like having this because on any given song, I can pull up a patch and instantly remember how I have my set laid out. Alright, so for pitch bend and modulation wheel, when you move them the first time, they may or may not work, or they may be improperly assigned, so I'm going to assign those now. The first thing I'm going to do is pitch, so I've selected pitch here, and then I'm going to select assign. And then I'm going to move the pitch bend. After that, I'm going to do the same thing with the modulation wheel, and you can see that I don't have to click assign again. I'm going to go ahead and move the modulation wheel, and then I'm going to also do it for sustain. So I'm not quite done here. I'm going to highlight the rest of my keyboard, and then I'm going to go back to color, and I'm going to select a custom color here, and select a background for some visual appeal. So I've got plenty of other controllers to add and link up, and the next thing I'm going to do is add 16 drum pads and 8 knobs. So I'm going to go over to my grouped controls, and I'm going to toss 2 1x8 pads. Now that I have both 1x8 strips, I'm going to select all of them. Then I'm going to ungroup them, and then regroup them so they act as one. And then I'm going to resize. Now it's time to add my 8 knobs, so I'm going to drag that over here from the group controls. And I'm also going to change the color. Then I'm going to resize. And I'm also going to remove the parameter name, and I can do that by going over to text labels and selecting nothing. So I've done that, and I've lined them up with my drum pads, and it's actually looking pretty good so far. Well, I want my drum pads and knobs to act as one unit, so I'm going to select all of these again, then I'm going to ungroup them and regroup. So now the whole unit will act as one. So I've moved that off to the side, and now I'm going to do the same process with my 9 faders and 9 buttons. I'm going to grab 9 faders from the group, I'm going to change the custom color, and then I'm going to resize. I've also got 9 buttons that I want to add, and I'm going to grab those here. And I'm going to remove the parameter label from these as well. Now I'm going to add 3 separate buttons in the middle of my screen. So I'm going to go back to the panel controls and grab those there. And you can see as I set the buttons up, I do get some guidelines to help me align them. Now I'm going to select all of these, remove the label, and then change the custom color. After that, I'm going to group them. The next thing I want to do is make everything here look like a unified panel. So I'm going to select every parameter I have. Then I'm going to ungroup them and group them all together. And then I'm going to change the background panel. The last thing I want to do before I show you how to start linking up hardware is how to change the appearance of these controls. So say I went and did everything like I just did, but then I realized I'd be more inspired if the faders looked like VU meters. Well, I can change that if I want. So I'm going to select all the faders, and under the Appearance tab where it says Control, I can select VU meter. Now all the faders have turned to VU meters. Now it's time to link up the hardware to the interface, and we did this earlier on in the video a little bit. When you're ready to begin linking up, select the parameter that you want to link. Then go over to the Assign button, and move the parameter on your keyboard. Now I don't need to click Assign again, I can just move on over to the next parameter, and then move that on the keyboard. So I'm going to do this with every parameter on my keyboard. Now that I have all my hardware linked up, what about this extra space on the screen? Well, I have a plan for that. First, I'm going to grab this background from the panel controls, and I'm going to resize it to fill up that space. Now I'm going to grab text from over here, and I'm going to almost fill up this entire space here. And I can use this for lyrics or chord changes. Now there's no sense in really putting any lyrics in this box over here. I'll show you how to set those for individual patches later on. This area right here is basically for a default text that will show up if you choose not to put anything in there. Now it's time for the finishing touch. I'm going to go over here and grab this selector, and I'm going to resize it. I'm going to keep this dual column display for the selector window, but I'm going to bump this up to 9 displayed items, so it's going to show me my set names on the left and my patch names on the right. Last, but also really important, let's export this layout so we can later import it. To do that, you can go over to this gearbox here and choose Export Layout. Likewise, when importing layouts into a new concert, click on this gearbox and select Import Layout, and then you can navigate to the layout manually. So we're finished in the layout menu, let's go on over to Perform and see how it would look. So that wraps up this segment on the layout menu. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.